Welcome to MacroMicroCosm Literary Review, home of the quarterly print and digital MacroMicroCosm Literary and Arts Journal. I am your host, Safa Bernal, and our current issue, Healing Hands, is available on MagCloud, Magster, and the Vrita Store in print and digital. Links down below. Make sure you go check it out. It's a lot of fun. Today, we have a special guest courtesy of Healing Hands, author and managing editor of Big Bend Literary Magazine, Kate Keenan.
Hi.
A little bit about Kate. Kate Keenan is a writer, editor, and content creator. She's the managing editor of Big Bend Literary Magazine, which we're about to start talking about as well. Kate earned her master's in English at the University of Texas at Tyler. Her residence straddles the world between her birthplace in the lush greens of East Texas and the dazzling desert landscape of Big Bend. She is a wife and the mother of 4 beautiful humans. Her work has been published in Noise City Zine, The Ductile Anchor, Live at the Coffin Shop, The Bullard Bulletin, Pond Trade Magazine, and Big Bend Literary Magazine, among others, like MacroMicroCosm.
Yeah, very excited about that edition.
It's a fantastic one. We got to do a lot of really cool things with Healing Hands, not just stories and fantasy bits and things like that, but also just getting into the hands of a caretaker and getting into the hands of medical professionals and people that actually care for others. I felt that was a really good way to kind of bridge the science fiction, the fantasy we do with the realism that our culture currently desperately needs.
Yeah, it almost feels like we're already kind of in an apocalypse type situation the past couple of years. So, I mean, what isn't science fiction right now, in a way?
Yeah. All we have to do is look at certain Twitter feeds and see humanoid robots and go, my book on. It's right here. Read my book. Abort. Stop. Read it. It's Neon Levin. I just released it a couple months ago, so I'm still shouting out. And of course, for people in the United States, one of the best ways to get your books online is actually bookshop.org. Not sponsored, but I do have an affiliate link for bookshop.org. I will have it down below, but it will be marked that it's affiliate, so you can do with it whatever you please. Bookshop.org gives a certain amount of its proceeds to independent bookstores within the United States. Big Bend Literary Magazine's mission is to support the artistic community of the Big Bend region in far west Texas going into Mexico, as I have just learned. Not being an American, I did not know, so I'm so glad Kate gave me that information.
I have my master's in English. I'm a writer, obviously, as well. And it occurred to me that I hadn't seen a literary magazine out here, which to me was crazy because everyone you meet who lives here or is here for any large amount of time is an artist of some kind. I mean, it's the most eclectic bohemian community imaginable. So whenever I saw that there wasn't like a cohesive place for them to showcase their work, it was just, okay, let's see what's going to happen if we try to start this. And it just took off way beyond what I could have imagined. It's very hard to keep up. But it's been really fun for the community and they like it a lot. And we've gotten to show more artwork, more writing, more effect of this beautiful place we live in across the world than we ever imagined. I'm just making this up as I go along, and Google isn't a lot of help. I'm pretty sure the instructions for making a literary magazine are not written by people that have ever even attempted to make a literary magazine.
How old is Big Bend?
The magazine or the place?
The magazine.
We only have 2 issues. So we started in July and we already have, thousands of readers. So I'm trying to keep up with something that I wasn't prepared to do. I literally put it on the website, and it was going to be an electronic journal, and it was going to stay very close knit to our community. And then something happened and it just blew up, and I started getting so many submissions, and then people were like, when do we get the print version? I was like, oh no, now I have to learn how to make a print magazine. So here we are, but they have turned out beautifully. I mean, they are just gorgeous. And I'm keeping up, but just barely.
Yeah, we've been running MacroMicroCosm since 2012. So
oh, wow.
I don't know if there's growing pains that ever stop. They just kind of get different. And then you think, I've got this. You know what? Yeah, we've got this. This next issue, it's good. We've got this. We've got our rhythm. The train is going. Duosima's working for me. This is great. And then all of a sudden someone goes, do you have TikTok?
Yes. Oh my God, they do though. Somebody did ask us that. They asked if we had TikTok, and I was like, I'm doing good just to have a Facebook and an Instagram, okay? Like, this is where I'm at. I'm not able to dance around with my magazine.
Oh, did you not see the reel thing I did on the Instagram? And they just look at you like, okay, grandma. And it's like, but I did the reel. It was the story, but with the music.
I put it together. It's fancy. It's good.
It took me an hour. And then for me, it's instantly go to the Discord server. Help. Jen said people in the server translate this for me. What does it mean when they call Harry Potter the boy that was unalived? I don't understand.
Lucky for me, I have a 16-year-old, so I just walk over to the other camper and I'm like, what is this? Why do you guys keep saying these weird words that aren't words? Like, what really does yeet mean? And does it mean the same thing today as it did a few weeks ago? Or is it now like an ironic yeet? Like, what is this?
And you finally get to start calling something, wow, that is fire. And they look at you like you're from 1912 and just like, bully, you know, like, let's have a good knuckle boxing match. You know, did this happen to us when we were this age? I don't think it.
I think so. But the craziest thing, I cannot remember what exactly it was, but it was like I was listening to a song from like, I don't know, the early 2000s or something. And my 16-year-old told me it was retro. And I was like, retro is the 70s, not the 2000s. Like, what? That's a thing now. We're retro
now.
So then did this particular issue have a bigger impact on you when you, I know you said you were in it, but reading it, did it have an impact?
Healing Hands, the idea for Healing Hands was mine because my spouse is a medical professional. My spouse works directly with ventilator patients. They are a specialist who does ventilator and palliative care. So this pandemic, you know, has been just watching them slowly go down the stress road until they come home, they have dinner, they go walk the dog, and then play video games for an hour and take a bath and go to bed.
Yeah.
And it's like,
and they're just trudging through. Oh my gosh.
Do I get a spouse? You know, and then of course I'm trying to be as encouraging as possible. When you're seeing them for 2 hours a day, sometimes 3, and that's it, because they're so tired they need to go to bed by 8. For me, I did 20 years of humanitarian work. So I'm looking at it from the perspective of remembering those days. And I eventually had to leave humanitarian work in about 2017 because it was too much. I couldn't do it anymore. On one hand, they expected you to be able to do it for as little income as possible, and I couldn't even pay my bills. But 2, it never ends.
Right.
Always that sense of guilt that ends up kind of holding on to you because, of course, well, you know, if I worked another hour, I could maybe potentially do X, Y, Z, and you have to kind of take a step back and be a human being yourself. So it was very important for me when I knew this pandemic was going to be sticking around for us to restructure Volume 7 so we can include a issue like Healing Hands, which actually became Healing Hands. You know, it was
I love that.
Yeah, I needed to do it. And our thing within MacroMicroCosm, because it's such a kind of ephemeral word, what's macro and microcosm? Well, the microcosm is this big. The macromicrocosm is the universe of this big. You know, it's that pervasive everything within a speculative lens. our main thing has always been us sitting down when we're going through the editorials, what we're going to do, what magazine issues we're going to do. Okay, what's the problem? How do we fix it? But before we can fix it, we need to know what the problem is. And before we can fix it, we need to be able to sit there and be a form of catharsis and a form of comfort for people that are going through it. So how do you do that? One of the biggest ways is through fiction, because people absorb stories and they absorb the moral of a story much more than they think they do.
Oh, yeah.
How do you change a society? You change its stories.
You change the narrative.
The global worldview narrative, it's
well, you got to start somewhere. I mean, think about the impact that a book like 1984 has had on this point. I mean, I read it, personally did not like it, but I still keep referring back to it. So, I mean, it had a huge impact on me just as a person. But globally, everybody talks about it all the time, especially when we're going through stuff like this.
Yeah. It's like my Oma. My Oma was born and raised in Germany in the 1930s. She's passed away now, but she would just look at me every once in a while and be like, "Ah, meine Liebchen, meine Liebchen. It's just 3 days. That's it. It's just 3 days. That's all it takes is 3 days."
Mm-hmm.
And on my end, for us making something like MacroMicroCosm, knowing that kind of thing in the back of my mind, how do we take that 3 days and instead get it to bring people together? As much as it's hard to understand that revolution should be compassion. And I think now, because everybody's in a state of fear and they're in a state of what's going on, and they're in a state of, I'm too tired for this, it's been too long, compassion and care and mercy are the most revolutionary things that we have.
Absolutely. Totally agree with you. And, I remember when I submitted to Healing Hands, I knew exactly, I just saw it. I'm constantly looking at themes. I want to find a home for my works, like a specific place that they belong. And those are pieces that I just love. They're important to me. And, I've been seeing all kinds of dark stuff on these theme deadlines on Duotrope and Submittable and all of that. And it is applicable to what's happening in our world. But that has not been what I'm writing. I don't write about that stuff. I was a teenager already. I'm done. Like, I don't need that. I need something a little lighter, happier, something that connects to others. And even if it's gonna be sad, like, there has to be like that connection there between humans, or what's the point of reading anything or writing anything for that matter. So I remember seeing like Healing Hands standing out against all these other like political themes and doom themes, and just being like, I'm trying for that one. Like, I get this theme and where it fits. Another thing I've noticed is there's been a trend in literary journals opening up in medical schools. I don't know if you guys have noticed that, or maybe your spouse has, but a lot of medical schools since the pandemic have started their own literary journals. And there's a lot of writing by the students that are medical students or professionals in the school that are writing about this stuff. So I've been drawn to reading those as well during this pandemic, because they're just so beautiful and compassionate, as you said.
Well, I think too, it's important, and we'll kind of touch on this before we get back onto things. But I think it's important to recognize too, and this is something we learned in the MacroMicroCosm Discord server quite a bit, because there is a political channel in the Discord server, which you have to have a certain role to get into, because it's just there for people who are willing to have a political discussion, knowing that basically almost every single other person in the room has a different opinion than them. We have everything in between. And because we are an international community, the talk of politics becomes a very different thing.
Oh, I'm sure.
And for MacroMicroCosm, because we are a Canadian journal with a fan base in the UK, Australasia, and America, whenever we talk about something, whenever we look at something, it's impossible to look at it through one specific lens. So then you have to take that overarch. You have to take, well, you know, if I say one thing about politics here, it's going to be completely different somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
So what then is the core? What is the essence of it? It's not the politics. People get distracted by politics all the time. What is the core of these arguments? Is it the politics? Is it, well, you know, what party does your person that you're following belong to? That's not the core of the problem. That's not the core of the issue. The core of the issue is nonpartisan. The core of the issue doesn't have to do with politics. It has to do with our society as a whole. And we do not need people outside of ourselves to do something about taking care of others. We can do that ourselves. We don't need.
In fact, that's what it takes. That's the only way, is if we all ourselves do it.
Yeah.
Not tell other people to do it, but do it ourselves.
So,
wow.
Yeah.
I know.
It's like, what? That was always the way that we looked at MacroMicroCosm. Every single question that we explore, it's always from that perspective. What is the core of this? What is the core that can be understood no matter what country you're in, no matter what place you're in? And then how do we look at it from the lens of different points of view? And what do we gain by looking at things heteroglossically, by looking at things from the perspective of different fields of expertise? We have everything from neuroscience scientists to career poets to artists who are also teachers. You know, we've got all of this wealth of people that all come at things from different angles. Isn't that what literature should be? Like, you know,
it should be. It should be everybody's an artist and everybody has something to offer and everybody has something to bring to the table, but they won't bring it to the table if the table's not there. You have to give them the opportunity to share, and they're not just going to appear out of nowhere. Like, you have to make the spread for them. So
why don't you tell me about your spread, Big Bend Literary Magazine?
So the place I live is far west Texas. We're surrounded by beautiful mountains. It's in the middle of the Chihuahuan Desert, which most people, when you think of a desert, you think, you know, Saharan, very blank. But out here, there's just tons of flora and fauna everywhere. And I can see Mexico from where I live. You had mentioned that's where it was. So we're very much up against the Rio Grande, and we have different sorts of ecosystems working together here. And along with that same idea, all the people out here are very different from one another. But as you were saying, what's the core? What brings them all together? And what brings them all here is there's a certain beauty and like a frontierism to this place. You really have to be a certain kind of person to make it out here. I'm living in a camper with my 6-person family. It sounds terrible, but we have other places to go out here. But you have to be able to not necessarily sacrifice, but adapt to the place around you. And you've got to love the things about where you are in order to be here. And we don't have to be here. We chose to be here. We have a home in East Texas as well. But all the people out here are just so giving, and they are there for each other. They disagree greatly from one another all the time. And they'll still, if your tank runs out of water and you need a refill, they're there for you. Like, anything you need, people are for each other out here, because you're in the desert and we are 100 miles away from the nearest even small town, a real grocery store. The Walmart is actually 300 miles away. So you either depend on each other or you die. Like, if you want these people in your life to keep it interesting, then you have to help each other. And so when we first moved here, my first month here, it was 120 degrees outside. So I stayed inside quite a bit and just tried to chill out and write and submit things. And it occurred to me that I needed to be a bigger part of the community if I was going to stick around. Like, I had to throw my talents into the back somehow. Before this, I was a special education educator. Well, I can't teach out here, so let's think of something different. And I noticed that there weren't any literary magazines or any places where our artists could come together. And just about everybody out here does art of some kind, whether it's music or painting or textiles, or I mean, it just any kind of art. They all have something. You can just approach anybody and be like, "What's your art?" and they will tell you. So I wanted to bring that to the table. And my idea was to have an electronic literary magazine where people from around my community could submit and we'd curate a really nice electronic experience. But what I ended up getting was hundreds and hundreds of submissions from people around everywhere because we're a tourist area. We're up against a national and a state park. We are a worldwide attraction because it's just absolutely gorgeous here. It's one of the coolest places in the world. And so I was getting submissions from people that had visited here or taken long camping trips here. People will stay for months. And they had all these beautiful pieces to submit as well. So we decided to expand out to that way to anybody that was inspired by our region. And then we were asked to do a print issue because people like things to hold in their hands. So now we're doing that. And so what the magazine has become is just an exciting piece all through the months of whether or not, hey, are you submitting? When does the issue come out? How many can I get from your small press? Like it's been a really exciting experience for everybody that lives here and more people that visit here as well.
That's amazing.
Well, yeah,
find spots in your community where there is a need to fill.
Yeah.
Filling that need. Who better than you? Who better than the person who finds that need and requires a way to fill it? Like that can figure things
and
out.
Knows what the need is. Just get in there. Like I'd never done a literary magazine before. I still have no clue what I'm doing, but I have produced 2 beautiful issues that I think anybody could look at and would find favorable. So if I can do it, then I mean, I'm not saying find a need to be a doctor or anything and then jump into that, but
that takes a little bit of education. Everybody, you can't just say you're a doctor. You need to actually go to school. But how do you juggle your own work, writing your own work with managing others?
Oh, wow. So I am very lucky. Like I said, I'm in a very talented community. So whenever I hand something to another editor, I don't have to worry about it anymore. It's theirs, 100% theirs. I might do some correspondence here and there, just spot check, but I don't really have to worry much about it. So I just have to stick to the layout and everything. Pretty much the way I've been working is off passion alone. I just don't sleep at all and just keep doing it until it's done on my end. And then I just know that all the rest of the content will come and that my people are dependable. With my own work, it's kind of the same thing. I'm all about burning the candle at both ends. I'm still alive, so might as well keep going. And just what I've found is creating this journal has really helped with my own work. Not necessarily just because it's inspiring, but because I'm reading so much that by the time I'm done, I'm ready to just write something of my own. Like, it is such a great learning experience. I would encourage anybody that has even a slight fascination in being or reading for a magazine or anything like that. And there's plenty out there that need help. Do it. It's one of the best learning experiences I've had. So it all just kind of comes together, reading and writing in general, right? You can't be a good writer unless you read. So
very true. Very true. There's another Discord server that I'm a part of where they do questions of the day. One of them was, well, what's the best advice you've ever gotten for being a writer? Read.
Mm-hmm.
People, but no. Well, what about writing your own thing? Like, what about a 10-step list of how to erase words like had? Read.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, that's it. Read as many different things as you can. Read styles that you don't normally read. Read.
And not even necessarily read good stuff. Just read. If it's bad, you learn just as much from that. You learn what you hate, right? So I actually taught college English for a while as well. So I naturally had to read a lot of essays. And that was another thing. I learned so much from reading not only what I needed to teach the students in my class, but the crap that I do wrong all the time. Like the overuse of the word that is the biggest, I hate it now.
That
but we do it. Yes. Oh my gosh. And pretty, like, is a colloquial thing, but it's, oh, so there's things like that I catch myself doing, which is okay, like if I'm writing something on Facebook, but it is not okay if I'm writing what I would consider a professional piece. But I wouldn't know that if I hadn't read all of those terrible essays.
To anybody that's had Kate as a student, I'm sure you learned an awful lot in her classes and that it was a very fulfilling experience. Stop using
and your paper is good now because we fixed it.
There you go. Yeah, no, that, had, and just, those are mine.
Mm-hmm.
I just go through, I do Control F on find, and I go that. And I go through the entire manuscript and just delete. You know,
that's awesome.
I'm going to be here for a while. Better make more coffee. Just delete. Just go through them.
I hate it when, like, Grammarly or whatever I'm using, like, I usually use 2 different ones, but whenever it's trying to add a that, I'm like, but that's not necessary. It doesn't have to go there in order for the sentence to make sense. Quit it.
Yeah. Condense your prose. Condense, yeah. Anybody who's been edited by me, and I do, one thing that I do twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays is I do a free workshopping session on Twitch.
Oh, cool.
Anybody can get their stuff workshopped if you want somebody to look at it. It's obviously not the same as having a professional edit because, of course, I am reading the stuff for the first time live on air and we're going through and seeing what we can find as we go. That's very different from a professional editing experience, but
I'm just thinking about what it must be like to have a live edit. Like, wow, you have some people with some real cojones coming on to your show for that. Like, God bless them. That's amazing. Like, that's true professionalism right there. It has been so great editing a novel. I have not completed a novel, so I haven't had the pleasure of editing my own works as far as that goes. But it is a different experience because you do have to recall, this feel of this character. This deviates. Like, this isn't the way that you were wording it in the last chapter, and now it sounds weird. Like, you have to keep track of not just the grammatical issues that could occur. It's the entirety of the work. You're like living and breathing it with them.
Yeah. And how long ago did you write this section? Oh, that was 4 years ago. Okay, so the sections that you gave me here, how long ago did you write those? About 3 weeks ago. Okay, you do realize that they're completely different characters.
Yeah.
It's been 4 years.
Yeah.
I mean, the average novel is between 5 to 10 years of development before it ends up in print. I mean, I know for me on Lieben, it was 8 years.
Oh my gosh.
I had given my editor a book I thought was going to be #1. And she came back to me a few weeks later and went, yeah, no, we want it. This is really good. That's like book 4. Go back and write book 1.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Trying to remember. How do you remember your own work? Somebody came to me the other day and was like, so I was reading this and I got this passage and it was really cool. I'm like, thank you so much. Did I write that?
Oh, I've totally been there. Absolutely.
Now, tell me more about your work. Tell me what you want readers to feel when they read, when they open up Healing Hands and they see the Kate Keenan pieces. There are a few Kate Keenan pieces we're very glad to have.
That's awesome.
What sense do you want the readers to feel when they're reading your work?
So my main style that I've been going for in my craft is to make everybody a reader, right? So tons of people will say, I don't read, it's not really my thing, or I'm not good at English, or I'm not good at writing, or whatever. But if you make it accessible and relatable enough, then you can pull them in, right? So like, that's why Harry Potter, for instance, is such a big deal. Like, anybody can relate to this. It's very smooth, clean writing, at least that first book. We write things on Facebook and Twitter, and and everybody reads our stuff. Well, it's totally just like casual, relatable. So when I write poetry or even a philosophical, creative nonfiction piece, I want it to be something that my mom will sit down and read. A self-professed, don't read a lot person will, like my husband, will be interested in reading, and that it tells a story, but it's also like, it's me, Kate, you know me, or even if you don't, you feel like you do, there's something there. And then another thing is I like to try and tie in as much of my own Southern East Texas heritage as possible. I feel like there's so many overtones to my culture, and so many different isms that are kind of tied up in it, that I just want there to be a little bit of a question there as to who is this person that I'm reading? Who are the characters in this story? Are they good? Are they bad? They're not. Like everybody's more than that. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to develop as round of a piece in as short amount of time as possible.
I remember when I first got a hold of your work, after it had gone through acquisitions and everything like that, and they were like, one of the editors at Vreda Literary, Tegan was just like, I need to preface this for you. I'm like, She's like, here's the Kleenex box. I'm going to back away. I'm going to go make tea. I need you to read this. And I was like, okay.
What's wrong with it?
I was like, all right. And it was my grandma's bed. And I started sobbing because I did that. I took care of my grandmother until she passed. It took years. She was in her 90s when she passed, but she had raised me.
Wow.
And so that switch of caretaking, and it was just like, I finished it and was like, please tell me somebody has sent this person a yes. She's like, oh yeah. Yeah. Why would you do this to me if we can't have it, And it was so utterly human and so utterly personal, but familiar.
Yeah. And that's what I want. I want people to like, it's really important to me that people remember their old people too, right? I mean, it's worldwide cultural issue that we just take our old people and we give them to somebody else and we just assume that it's fine. And they're not. Like, even if they have the best top care, it's not you. It's not your hands doing the work. It's not your face speaking to them. It's not the same. And so that experience taking care of her, which we did twice. She ran herself over with her car a few years ago. And so she rehabbed in our home for like 6 months, 8 months, something like that. And I was just convinced like she was going to die. And then she lasted 4 more years. And I'm like, go. So when it finally came time, this time I was like really thinking like she is going to come back from this. And as she slowly declined, like remembering what it was like before, and I have already gone through this grief. I know how to do this. I just don't know this part. That's something that you can only understand if you're willing to hang on to it to the very end, and you're willing to walk through it. And some people are grossed out by it or weirded out by it, but it's not gross. It's not weird. It's beautiful. Like, you are helping this person die. Wouldn't you want that for yourself? Like, it was one of the best things I've ever done. I will never regret it.
Yeah, and it's, depending on what culture you come from, are varying degrees of being connected.
Mm-hmm.
Connected to the end. And I think it's such an important thing to put forward in North America too, because it's that, well, I pay blah blah a month to take care of grandma, and they're fine. They get to play bocce ball. They can play bocce ball whenever they want. Yes, but they can't play with you.
Yeah. And they don't like bocce ball, bros. Like, did they play bocce ball before? No. Okay.
Shuffleboard courts? Like, who plays shuffleboard?
I don't know anyone.
Yeah. Maybe ping pong or something, but really? Oh, yeah, they're really big hockey fans. Well, do they watch hockey? No, they watch golf.
Why?
Why would you do this to somebody that you love, but not to say that being in care is terrible. Like, obviously my spouse
No, it's wonderful.
does care as well, but the patients that my spouse sees are too sick, they're too ill to be in residential care. There's a tremendous level of care that can be done, but without your family around you, what kind of fresh hell is that? Without the ability to just sit there and be together.
Please God. Me. I got 4 kids, so at least one of them, right? I mean, and it makes you think about the rest of your family too. I mean, she has brothers that don't have family, and then oh my God, someday I'm going to lose my mom. Like, she lost her mom, which one of my pieces was about that as well. I mean, without this traditional expectation that you are going to be there to the end of my life, like, I helped bring you into this world. Please help me out of it. Like, we need that. And I've read so many pieces from so many cultures that were about, I guess what you would call nursing care or hospice care, palliative care. China had a huge literary movement about it. I'm not even sure we've had it in North America. Like, looking back, where are the old people in our stories? Like, really, the ones that are sick and dying, like, they're not there.
Yeah, it is a very good question, and to tie it into Healing Hands, we actually have a story by a incredible writer, Tim Hickson, of the widely popular YouTube channel Hello Future Me. His story, Panstellar, is in Healing Hands, and it was an absolute joy to work with Tim. As briefly as we got to, it was so wonderful to meet somebody that you consider a hero, and they're just a wonderful, down-to-earth, great person. You never really know how it's going to be going into an edit with anybody. There's
right.
How far
my crushing your soul?
Is this going to be like some form of Olympic fencing match, or is this going to be a cup of coffee and a hug, or what's it going to be? And working with the people that I got to work with in Healing Hands was just so effortless. It was beautiful. It was a really beautiful thing. But in Tim Hickson's work that we see in the story Panstellar, we go through the entire life of Aroha from childhood to old age. We see her father age. We see her father go until his last days and pass. We see her get into her last days. So it was so beautiful to connect the two as well, because you've got a story from a different perspective, and then Tim Hickson writes a science fiction story which has very similar themes.
Yeah.
And it was wonderful to see those interconnections. And then, of course, we also have work from other great poets, both of whom are doctors, they're medical professionals, and again, attached to your themes in a similar way, but from a different lens.
That first poem, like, I read it like 3 times. It was absolutely gorgeous and totally got me, taking the gloves off, and then now I'm typing this on my phone, like, really quickly. Like, I get that, like, squeezing in the time for yourself, making it for yourself. Oh, I just loved that poem so much. And I felt like it connected to the overall theme so well. And it wasn't even abstract about it. It was directly, like, connected.
Yeah, and that was Kate Meyer Curry. Kate Meyer Curry is a doctor in England.
Wow.
So yeah. So I'm guessing I know where you're going to go with this, but does writing energize or exhaust you?
Oh my gosh. If I start writing at night, I'm up all night. Like, I can't stop. I'm a pretty energetic person, I would say, in the first place, but I really start kicking off, about 6 p.m. And then if I'm going to write something, I'll just go until it's done. Which is probably why I haven't been able to write a novel, is because I would die.
It's impossible to write a novel in one sitting.
Yeah.
What are common traps for aspiring writers? And I know we talked a little bit about this when we were like, read. But
Mhm.
are there any common traps that you see aspiring writers fall into?
Oh, wow, absolutely. And especially now that I'm on the editor's end. So if we're talking creative writing or if we're talking submitting, right? Like trying to get published, that's an aspiring writer, right? If an editor says something to you, just listen. Like they're not being mean, they're not rejecting you, they don't think your stuff sucks or whatever. Like they are legitimately trying to help you. And the fact that they took the time to even put a single mark on your stuff means that it's good already. So that's one mistake that I know some people have made that could have made it easily into my magazine down the road if they had realized I was attempting to collaborate and not attempting to say, never, I hate this, like, blur.
Well, the truth is, if an editor really is like, no, there's nothing, this is just, this is not what we're looking for, they're not going to open a dialogue. They're
Mm-mm.
going to put it away and give it a rejection, and that's it. It's just gone. If an editor actually takes the time to give some feedback, that means there's
Mhm.
something promising to it already. And two, you've probably dealt with this too, trying to get as many aspiring writers as possible to recognize that sometimes it's not about the quality of the work, it's about what the work means and whether or not it fits with everything else.
Absolutely.
I mean, it could be
That's why I love to be able to say, not now, but please resubmit this specific work. Like, and then I usually will put some edits on that. But I think people just, they just get it in their head. They're so excited that they're going to be published. Even if it's a tiny little magazine like I have, it's not as tiny as you think it is. And there's a lot of stuff we're going through. And I'm not the only editor, and you might not understand my vision. So I'm giving you what I can give you, and just understand that you're probably like 10th place out of 400 people. So that's good, right? I mean,
yeah. And maybe this issue was about some form of magical lizard, and you gave us a wonderful, beautiful treatise on ancient Grecian urns. Well, it's a beautiful, wonderful treatise about ancient Grecian urns. We needed something about lizards.
and you didn't even squeeze the word lizard in there arbitrarily. Why? Oh, I've got some crazy stuff. I mean, I don't think anybody that's actually going to take the time to ask questions like, what can I avoid, would make some of the mistakes that I've seen, though. But yes, absolutely. Fitting the theme, reading the submission guidelines, just those are there for a reason, to streamline for the editors. Straight up, follow the guidelines. Just do it straightforwardly. Don't deviate from that. It does not make your work stand out.
There's a reason why we ask everything to be in a certain font in a certain way so that we can see it the way it is. Follow those things, because two, and here's something for aspiring writers, when a literary journal or a literary magazine has submission guidelines, that is basically step one of, can I work with this person?
Mm-hmm.
If you're
Mm-hmm.
not willing to follow the simple guidelines of, this is what font we need, this is the layout we need, this is the kind of document you should send us, if you're not willing to do that, how do we know you're willing to go through an edit? How do we know you're going to be okay with the fact that we will take your work and we will lay it out the way we want to? Sure,
Right?
have some giant consideration of like, I pictured it, blah, 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 and with roses on the side and all this kind of stuff. That's great, but it needs to fit with our aesthetic, with our magazine. And if you're not
Right.
okay with that, then there are amazing places. Medium.com. There's tons of different places that you can publish your own work.
Right?
But when you're publishing,
Make a blog. You can do whatever you want on your blog.
Self-publish a short story collection, different things like that. Like, there are places for that, but this is about collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
That's
my favorite thing about editing, about this magazine, is just collaborating with people, and hearing their vision and their stuff, and just getting to know these people on a deeper level, right? So when we do a feature, sometimes I'll even send them like a sneak peek and be like, hey, check it out, this is what I'm thinking. And they might have opinions or whatever, but The good ones, the ones that I want to work with again and put in my magazine again, are like, I really love this, and this is your vision, and I don't want to take away from that, but here's also an idea. And that's good. I like that. That keeps me creative. That keeps the conversation going. That keeps me energetic. It keeps stuff moving forward. But I am asking for that from you during the collaboration process. Like, not ahead of time.
No.
I don't have time for that.
No, sorry. I have this much energy. I have this much time to give you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's the sad thing too. They think, you know, we only have so much time. We only have so much energy. And we have to make sure that it's going towards things that are going to enrich the communities that we're in.
Absolutely.
So,
and be okay with rejection. Rejection is fine. Keep going. There's a bazillion places to publish out there. And if you're going to get your feelings hurt every time you get a rejection or a form letter, then this is not the business for you, because that's a lot of what it is.
Well, too, think of the absolute relief that we should feel when we get rejected by something that it's like an editor going, you know what? I am not the right person to work with your prose. Thank God you told me now.
Yeah.
Thank you for telling me now. I can look for a more appropriate place. Like,
oh my gosh. So I've had, that is so true. So I submitted something, I think it was within this past year. I submitted something to a newer lit journal. And I really don't think these people, like, they weren't ready to take submissions, because they essentially sent me an acceptance letter and then asked me for my biography, which I had already given them, weirdly enough. And then months went by, and I knew it was coming up for publishing. So I was like, hey guys, I mean, you were kind of being weird. Like, I kind of need to know if you're going to use this piece or not, because otherwise I need to resubmit it. And they followed up with we didn't want this piece. It had a cuss word in it, or whatever it was. And I'm like, I could have been submitting this piece for like 6 months, and you didn't reject it, but you seemed to accept it. Like, be happy that you did not have to go through that with your piece, because that was just such a mind. Can I say bad words? It was a mind fuck.
Yeah, you know, do you want to find out on the first or second date whether or not you can live with this person? Or do you want to find out after you've been married for 2 years? I want to find out immediately. I want to find out, is this going to work? You know, because otherwise it's almost as if you're stealing their time. You know, if you've got reservations, or if you're working with an editor and you're like, you know what, it's just not working. I don't feel connected. I don't feel like I can actually talk to my editor. I feel afraid, or I feel this, or I'm very protective of my piece and they're not respecting that, you know, whatever it is. If you find that you're not connecting with your editor, one, you should have a big person conversation about it and see if you can't get on the same page. And if you cannot get on the same page, recognize it, own it. It's okay.
Yeah. And remove it. And if you really, really are into like MacroMicroCosm magazine, you want to be in it, then maybe write something else that is compatible, that you don't mind being edited in their way, in their style.
Yeah, we have a style. We have a style. Our editors have a style. We go with concise prose. If there's a way to shorten a sentence by taking out extraneous words like had, just, and that, we do it. You know?
Yes.
Yeah, it's like, yes. If that's something that you're like, actually, no, that doesn't fit with my style, that's okay. You don't have to be everything to all people. You don't have to be forcing yourself into a hole that doesn't feel right.
Mm-hmm.
Just have to find the right niche. And then once you find that relationship between an editor or a series of editors and yourself, where you feel comfortable going back and forth and being like, hey, what do you think about this character? We're good.
But hey, that's fun. That's fun to watch. I mean, we watch Big Lebowski. Can anybody legitimately say that you want that guy to be like your best friend or your partner in life? I mean, but he's hilarious. That movie's great. So go for it, guys. Be daring.
Be daring. Be daring. It's okay to leave people uncomfortable, but you can't always leave them there.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's another
Don't leave them uncomfortable with your writing. Leave them uncomfortable with the content of your writing.
Now, do you want each piece of your work to stand on its own, or are you trying to build a body of work with connections?
So I read that question and I was like, oh my gosh, how to answer this. So I think it's inherent in my writing that it's going to connect, because what I have decided, and it was a very intentional decision years ago when I said to myself, I'm going to write very personal, relatable works that are beautiful and well crafted. So if I'm going to do that, then it's going to have that memoir quality to it, even if it's fiction. So I don't think I purposely tie it together, but I do try to make it something that sort of has this inertia that drives my imaginary audience, I guess. So that were I ever to compile these pieces together, then it would be like, you know, you read an Emily Dickinson poem, you know that's Emily Dickinson. If you read a Kate Keenan poem, ideally, by the end of my life, I'm good enough to where somebody could say, you know, oh, that's Grandma Kate's poetry, you know, like, so yeah, I mean, I want it to tie together, but do I have some sort of fantasy land and all the characters are living within a proximity to each other like a Faulkner? No, I don't have that much of a tie.
Now, how did publishing your first work change your process?
I mean, obviously when you publish your first work, then you feel like you're a professional now, right? So like you've got to step up your game. So I remember the first piece that I ever had published in anything, and it was just a zine, but it was a great little zine in my hometown, Tyler, Texas. I just felt like so legit that I went back and edited like everything I'd ever written. And we've already discussed how once I start doing these things, I don't stop. And at this point, I have thousands of things. So, you know, spend an entire night and probably a day, like editing everything have, which it never dies, right? I mean, I don't know how you like printed that book out. I just don't know, because I don't think I could like let it. I don't think I would ever stop wanting to edit anything that I ever wrote. So I think that's another thing about when you get published, just letting that work now, just that is the work now, right? There's no going back. It is now that work and you cannot change it. It is published. It is done. Move on from it. So I think that's fun.
It is very difficult. I won't lie. With Neon Lieben too, it took 8 years to get out, but then when it was out, the first thing I wanted to do was I reread it as I was, you know, preparing to do audiobook and things like that. And I was like, nope, got to change this, got to change that. And I was starting to mark a paperback version of my own book. And again, it was Tegan, my editor, who was just like, she was literally sitting here in the office beside me. And she's just like, honey, I love you. It's done.
Yeah.
Like, move on. And I was like, no, but you know, this is just, I think I can reduce this. And why did I repeat this again? And sweetheart, it's done.
Yeah.
Move on.
Trust yourself. There was a reason that you wrote it this way. In that moment, you made that decision. You know that you went back and edited it. You know that you've read it 1,000 times. It's done. Like that I think is the biggest lesson that I have taken away from publishing things, is sometimes I just got to be done with the work. Like I can go back and edit it based on, you know, if I get a personal rejection and it tells me something, I might go back edit it. Like, yeah, you know, like I'm like, oh, okay, I understand that, like inappropriate or whatever. But generally, like if you're willing to submit it, then it's done.
It's done. You know, and I mean, sure, 20 years from now, when you're doing your 20th anniversary edition, do you want to go back and revise it? That is up to you. Think of how many bodies of works you could make in that same amount of time.
Exactly. Just write something new. If you get the urge to overly edit what you know is a complete work already, because all of the people in your life that have read it think it's great already, then stop yourself and write something else.
So what's your favorite underappreciated novel?
Oh, I love this question. Okay. So, years and years ago, I worked in a bookstore. I think I was like 17. And somehow on the bargain bookshelf, I picked a book called Mockingbird off the shelf. It was like $3. And you'll know the name of this person now because there's a Netflix movie off of his chess novel. But Walter Tevis was the author. And oh my God, I just fell in love with this book. It has like all of the great elements of any story. It's not overly written or flowery. He's a very succinct writer. Although I would say The Queen's Gambit is a little bit more flowery, I suppose. But Mockingbird is just a very straight through science fiction with 3 main characters who tie together perfectly, and it has like really obvious allusions and then some more hidden ones, so you can pick it apart all you want. Like if I could teach like a 7th grade English class on just that book and it was acceptable for me to do so, I could. So I've probably read that book like 20 times, and I actually have a first edition signed copy of it. Yes, I know. I'm so fancy. But I would encourage anybody to read it. You can read it in one day. Like, it's doable.
Now, how do you balance making demands on the reader with taking care of them?
Demands on the reader with taking care of them. So, yeah, so that's kind of my whole thing, right? So I want to be personable. I want to be very clear. I don't want to use too many crazy words, but if I'm going to, I want that word to sound like you don't have to look it up, right? You might never have read this word or heard of this word in your entire life, but somehow in this sentence, I can just make up in my head what it means, right? Because it just feels right. That's kind of the cool thing about poetry, right? Is that cadence and just the way things fit together. If you're going with that meter, like you are just guided along. So I try to do that even with my more memoir nonfiction pieces. But I guess I'm taking care of them by not straining them too much. I'm not challenging the non-reader in them too much, but I'm also pulling them along into something that they don't really realize they're getting themselves into until they're already in it. So, I mean, hopefully that's what I accomplish in some of my more difficult pieces with more like philosophical ideas. But I feel like with the 2 pieces, my grandmother's bed and then my hands, I feel like those are very easy reader kind of things. But then with the death and living, you sort of get pulled in because it starts out like real easy, like la da dee dee, and then you're like, oh my God, like what am I reading about? And it's, wow, she's really thinking about this stuff hard. Let me try and come up with it. And there's some big words in there, but I'm hoping that the reader can't stop because they've already got that momentum going and they're already in that moment with me. And it's supposed to be confusing and it's supposed to be hard.
You're bringing us through it, but we know we're going to make it out on the other side of that valley.
Yeah, because here I am. I'm okay, right? Or I wouldn't be writing this down. So we're gonna get through it. We got to go through some dark stuff, but we're gonna hash this out.
There's a comfort in catharsis. We are actively working on something, and we are going with catharsis. You know, catharsis is not a stuck thing. It's got wavelengths, just like sound. You know, and you got to keep it going. Now,
and that's, I think, something that people that have, you know, not everybody has really experienced grief to its full impact. I didn't really experience grief, real grief, until my friend completed suicide in 2017. Now, I'd already lost grandparents. You know, I'd already lost people I loved, and it's not to say I didn't grieve for them, but it just wasn't that all-encompassing process. It just, it is like waves. Like you've got to allow your catharsis to be like grief. and you've got to write it, and you've got to appreciate it for what it is. It's important. It's there for a reason. There's a reason that we do these things. There's also a reason that we take ourselves into our own hands, hold ourselves, pull ourselves up, reach out to others, say we need help. Yes, take deep breaths.
Or, right. If we're looking at this in literary terms, try to make a purely original story that no one's ever done before. I guarantee you, I will find at least 7 different works.
Yeah.
I'll find them. You're never going to do it. People who are like, no, you don't understand. This is purely original. It starts like this, and it goes like this, but it's in space. Oh, like this author, and this author. Mm-hmm. Well, no, this is original. Well, these people have also done that. Well, but no, it has to be original. What is the original part? Is it the potentially archetypal parts of storytelling that we've had since the beginning of time in the very first Lascaux cave paintings? Or is it your voice?
Yep. Your perspective, your deep understanding of yourself that then comes out on the paper. That's really the only way to be a good writer, is to be in tune with yourself.
So speaking in those terms, what is literary success? And what does it look like for you?
For me, I love being published. That's wonderful and very exciting. And I like sharing the news with everyone because it seems like that makes them happy. I mean, it makes me happy, but it seems like then I'm like, see, I am a writer. I told you, but really, I mean, just for me, I'll sit down and I'll write a story and I'll read that story and I'll be like, that story's fucking good. Like, that's the enjoyable part. It's a hobby. It's I could say I'm professional or whatever all day long. That's fine. But I actually have other professions that are things that I don't necessarily always like to do. I sit down and write because I want to. I'm not required to do it. And were I required to do it, I'm not sure if it would take something away from it or not. I guess it would depend, but I feel like it kind of would, because literary success to me is leaving behind a body of work that potentially, my great grandchildren will pull out of a trunk in the attic someday and be like, oh my God, our great grandmother was a literary genius. And then my ghost will be like, ha ha ha, I knew it. Like
words.
Ha ha, just look at this inappropriateness. No wonder she was never published, but today she can be. My grandmother, she died October 29th. And when I was little, she allowed me to read her novel manuscript. I think I was like 8 or 10 or something. But she attempted to publish it, but didn't really try too hard. And I mean, this is like hand typed on a damn typewriter while she's sitting up in the San Juan Mountains camping in Colorado. Like, this bitch was hardcore. So she writes this 280-page children's YA novel with just deep historical information in it. It's just so, so good. So over the years, I finally got her to promise that manuscript to me. And when I was allowed into her home right after she died, I walked in and I was like, I'm only here for 3 things, right? And 1 is the dinosaur poop that she stole from me when I was little. And 2 is my notebook travelogue. And 3 is her manuscript. And everybody was like, she has a manuscript? And I was like, this is the best moment ever. I'm the only one that has read that book. I'm the only one. So I have her manuscript. I'm going to lightly edit it and hopefully get it published. It's beautiful. But just I want that, right? I want this weird stuff that my grandma did for myself. I want to be that weirdo. And that is literary success. I know it is for her because she left behind the secret novel. God.
On a typewriter in the mountains.
Yeah. And she didn't there's 7 copies and she did not photocopy them. They are typed copies. And she could have photocopied them. It was the 80s. I don't know.
It was a word. We had those fax machines. Do nothing. She typed them all out. Oh man, that is badass.
I know. I think it's because, like the only thing I can fathom is like when you write something that you really like of your own, then you just read it over and over and over and over and over and over and over again until you're finally like, you have to stop I say you, I mean me. So I'm guessing that's what happened. Like, I guess she figured instead of just sitting on my ass and just reading this, I'm just going to retype it 7 times.
Well, she might send a copy to a literary agent and then she'll need to type another one, meditative practice the same way that people walk a labyrinth, but it's so, oh, wow, that is amazing. Do you view writing as a kind of spiritual practice?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's all it is for me. I mean, I have like other spiritual ways of being, but definitely I have learned not to write unless I feel like writing. Or it's just like, it's just meh. It's just words on paper. I can get an assignment, like anybody can tell me, hey, I need you to write this article about pawns and kids. And I'll be like, on it. And I'll go and write this article. But in order to like really write like what I love to write, I have to wait for that time when I feel it. And it's like this creeping, like I have to write something, like feeling. So that's got to be spiritual, right? I mean, it's something inside of me telling me to do it. It's not like a compulsion or anything. It's like, I've got something to work out. I've got something to say and I don't quite know what it is. So let's go.
Love it. Now, if you didn't write, what would you do?
If I didn't write, well, I'm not very good at drawing anymore. I used to have some talents. I guess I just take really long walks all the time. Just wonder what it is that I could be doing that was creative. I don't have any other talents. I, for a short period of time, did watercolor, and I'd cut out little cutouts and build like these little worlds out of watercolor people and castles and stuff. So maybe I would do that, but it would not even come close to what I get out of writing. I'm sure any artist would say that about their medium. Like, if I took my husband's painting away, I don't know what he'd do.
That's how you know it's a consummate thing, It's like, wait, what? But I can't take it away. What do I have?
But it's just there.
You're just looking into this dark abyss, and you're just like, someone give me a pen. I just need a pen and paper, please. Put this down.
I'll write in the dirt. I don't care. I think that question will haunt me for forever. I think I'm traumatized now.
Well, the good thing is, with the catharsis of friends and the like-minded individuals, you can eventually get through the trauma.
We'll find something.
Pantomime. There's always pantomime. You could do a one-woman show of just standing on stage, screaming into the distance.
Why doesn't anyone understand me? Because I can't write words to tell you what I mean.
Hand me a pen, but every single pen breaks. Like, that would be true horror.
Oh my God, it's hell. Somebody has to write the story.
Somebody has to write the story of an author with a typewriter where they write the best page they've ever written, and then every night it untypes itself and they have to go back and do it again.
And they try to write it down and the pen breaks and the paper burns in their hands. It would be like that Twilight Zone episode of the guy in the nuclear explosion where his glasses break and he can't read all the books that he wanted to. Yeah, forever. I have really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun.
This has been a lot of fun. It's really good to be able to kind of sit down and just chat, take the rabbit holes through the warren and up the bluff, and hopefully not into a hunting dog's mouth, but we'll see how it goes. And so for everybody that is listening right now, we have been talking to Kate Keenan, and I am Safa Burnell, the author of 3 books. MacroMicroCosm Literary Journal is a quarterly print and digital magazine right now. It is available, our Healing Hands issue, on MagCloud, Magster, and the Vreta store. Please check out Kate Keenan's work. Please check out MacroMicroCosm and Healing Hands. We rely on the support of our subscribers and our Patreon, patreon.com/macromicrocosm, and just people who love to read or love to write and then read their own writing. You know, that's
or writers who are supposed to be reading, because read.
If you want to be a writer.
You cannot be a writer unless you read.
And if you need some reading lists and you need to know what to read because you don't know, check out MacroMicroCosm and check out Big Bend Literary Magazine.
Two great magazines.
2 great magazines, 2 wonderfully different viewpoints on different places in the world.
Yes.
And please consider following us on social media at MacroMicroCosm on Twitter, at MacroMicroCosm Lit Journal on Instagram, and Big Bend Literary Magazine. What's the @ on that one?
So we have a Facebook page. It's Big Bend Literary Magazine, of course. Same with Instagram, Big Bend Literary Magazine. We have BigBendLiteraryMagazine.com. So just type in those words and you should come up with something.
Links for the magazine and for the social media accounts will be down below or at vredamedia.ca/macromicrocosm. That is VRAEYDAMEDIA.ca/MACROMICROCOSM. Yes, I'm a masochist when it comes to making names for things. If you would like to be interviewed or you know an author who would, please contact Lori on vredamedia.ca. Please consider supporting MacroMicroCosm through purchase of one of our magazines or by joining our Patreon. Also, let's give our support to Kate and Big Bend Literary Magazine. We hope you have a fantastically creative day.